Hi, everybody. Hank Linderman here. I hope you're hearing me. Um, I'm your Democratic nominee for Congress here in Kentucky's 2nd District. And, I don't know if I make it clear to you all, but I do lots of preparation for these things. And then at the last minute, there seems to be the occasional technical detail. Anyway, what you're looking at is something my brother, who's a wonderful artist, did out of a headshot that he had taken of me, and he's proposing that we turn this into stamps. Okay, sounds interesting. Maybe we'll end up with stamps. Hi, how are you all doing? Yes, and I just saw a comment from Bill McNichol reminding us to please share these. Please share this Facebook Live, and when you get the option, you click on share. You can also do select start a watch party, and that has even more effect. Hi, Mary, how are you doing? And I got a contribution yesterday from someone who shows up regularly on the podcast here in the comments. So thank you for doing your contributions. By the way, we haven't talked about that for a while. If you've got a Venmo account, you can use this QR code and scan it, and that will let you contribute $1 if you want. Hi, Mark. How are you? Glad you're here. You can also go to our website, which is in the crawler down below. You can contribute directly at the website. The website's about to be overhauled, so in the next week or so, I hope we'll see a new website. So obviously lots to talk to everybody about today. There's almost too much news, and I've been doing phone calls and meetings all day, and also digging through the things I wanted to talk about today. One that came up that I'm going to be digging into is the idea that the looters, we're complaining about looters quite a bit, or at least I'm hearing that from conservatives. They're looting, they're stealing. Our Secretary of our Treasury is, hi Barbara, how are you? Thank you for being here. And Barbara and Mark, you might have missed it. I was thanking someone who shows up here pretty regularly for contributing again. This is someone who contributed again, and I don't want to embarrass them, but I do want to say thank you. Anyway, we're complaining about looters who show up in stores, during the civil disobedience stuff that's going on now, and they take things. And fair enough, that's a problem, but let's all remember, stuff can be replaced. Houses can be replaced. People's lives cannot be replaced. We can replace windows, we can, replace vehicles, but we can't replace people. But let's talk about looting for a second. What is it when we have governments that allow Wall Street to use our economy as their own personal Las Vegas? And they twice now in 2008 and now in 2020, and twice in 12 years they've completely destroyed the economy. Well, what happens after that when the economy starts to come back is that wealthy people go in and show up and scoop up all the assets. And one person who did that was a guy named Steve Mnuchin. He's now our Treasury Secretary. That's how he became a multi-millionaire, was after the crisis. He was able to go in and buy up all kinds of troubled real estate and make a killing on it. There's plenty of examples of that. So we may talk more about what is looting exactly. And, the looting that we've seen is not that big a deal. But let's get to some of the things. I'm not quite as organized as I'd like to be. So this is, we're looking at the numbers from yesterday, and look at that. The new deaths popped right back up to over 1,134 people lost their lives. They're calling it due to COVID. We're over 108,000. We're probably going to hit close to 110,000 today. But what is interesting is when you do the breakdown of the states. By the way, I didn't bother with Kentucky today because Kentucky only had 3 new deaths yesterday. And Kentucky appears to be doing a rather good job compared to their neighbors, especially. And I've got another chart to show you about that. Yesterday, Massachusetts was the new number 1 in new cases and new deaths. Today, it looks to be California in new cases, and Illinois in new deaths. Um, Graham Parsons said, some steal with a gun and some steal with a fountain pen. Yeah. I guess it's not looting if it's legal, if you've paid politicians to make it legal what you're doing. Anyway, this is interesting to see that the numbers are volatile. They're still dropping a bit. I mean, yes, they had 90 deaths in New York, but that's nothing like what they used to have. So I'm going to show you another chart, if I can locate it here. Oh, I'm not seeing it. I'm sorry. Oh, here it is. So this is the, I found this on Naked Capitalism, but it's actually from Johns Hopkins. Notice that Tennessee is screaming up. Now, see how they had a dip and then they scream back up? I don't trust that dip. Kentucky had a little bit of a poke up, but is staying pretty low. But overall, look at that green Kentucky, or that green Tennessee line versus the orange Kentucky line. These are neighboring states, and our governor, Governor Beshear, got active about shutting the state down at least a week before Tennessee, and you can see the result right there. North Carolina is now having a resurgence, or they're having a big surge in their cases, which is why they're a little bit anxious to host the Republican National Convention. And by the way, one of the places that's being discussed is Nashville. A friend of mine who is the state director for Indivisible in Tennessee and Kentucky tweeted out, "No," but Nashville would kind of make sense. So that won't surprise me if that's where that goes on. I want to show you a couple of Twitter things that are going on right now. Yeah, and Bill is reminding us, spread the message by doing a share and start a watch party, which is really, really helpful. So this is kind of a funny tweet that I saw just a little while ago. There's been a bit of a kerfuffle over whether it was tear gas that was used to get rid of the peaceful protesters near the church yesterday when President Trump threw them out. Was it yesterday? Everything's moving so quickly. Anyway, Jason Sklar says it's only tear gas if it comes from the Tiare region or Tier region of France. Otherwise, it's just sparkling eye irritant. I think that's wonderful. Here's another tweet I had today. By the way, don't be afraid. Sign up for Twitter if you haven't done it. And if you do nothing but follow me, and anytime you see a tweet, just retweet it. That helps spread the message as well. This is a tweet I saw earlier today. There is apparently now a plurality of support for Black Lives Matter among whites. This is the first time. So I think that's a fantastic thing. Now, I think I want to talk to you about conspiracies, because there are all kinds of conspiracies. And one that I'm hearing from conservatives is that George Soros has bought pallets of bricks and then had them dropped off in areas where there are going to be protests. And of course, there's no evidence of anything like that happening. And hi, Mark. Glad you're here. Good to see you. So that's just one of the conspiracies. Well, there's another conspiracy going on, and that is that that there are people from the right wing that are, or actually President Trump is claiming that Antifa, which stands for anti-fascist, has been provoking some of the violence and some of the looting. And we'll get into Antifa in a minute. But the first thing I want to show you is this article from Forbes magazine. Forbes is, generally a business-related, pretty conservative group. Hi, Beth. Glad you're here. And this is a story about Umbrella Man. And I strongly suggest you get a look at this, because this happened outside of the Minneapolis police station that housed the officer who killed George Floyd. And a demonstration gathered outside of them. Now, ultimately, they burned that police department down. But before that happened, They were outside kind of yelling, and out of nowhere appears a guy dressed in black, wearing black gloves, black pants, black shoes, a black jacket zipped up, a full coverage gas mask, a hat, and carrying a black umbrella and, in the other hand, a ball-peen hammer. And he walked out of the crowd. He just kind of came out of nowhere and walked over to the AutoZone, which was right next to the protest, and just started breaking windows. Boom, 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 boom. And there's a video. If you look up this story, there's a video there, so you can watch this happening. This is not out of nowhere. Now, there's been some speculation that supposedly... Now, by the way, you'll see on the video, the people confront this guy, and one young man offers him a toke off of his joint, clearly messing with him. And then somebody else says, "Are you a cop?" And the guy kind of walks away. Later on, apparently a police officer, this is not in the article, but someone told me, so this is hearsay, told me that another police officer from that department came forward and said, that face mask, that gas mask, is what we use in our department. There was speculation that the umbrella was so that the helicopters that were overhead would be able to keep track of him so they could support him. Like I say, we're in conspiracy world just a little bit here. I'm not betting my life on any of this. And supposedly the guy's ex-wife said, "Oh, that's him. I recognize him." Now, the police department has denied that this is their guy. But the point is that someone who really didn't belong with the civil rights demonstrators that were outside of the police department, somebody who didn't belong with them went over and started breaking windows in a store right next to this. Now, I heard rumors about this going on on 4th Street on Saturday night in Louisville. So I spoke to a friend of mine who has a business on 4th Street. And first of all, his business is fine, even though he said basically every business on the street had their glass broken, and he said his wasn't. So he was very pleased about that. He wasn't sure why he dodged a bullet, but he spoke to someone who was in the area watching it go on. "Hi, Dennis. How are you? I'm glad you're here." As he was watching the demonstration, the only people breaking glass and breaking windows were white people. And this is a story that we're hearing, that there's some sort of attempt to spur looting and rioting so that the police can come in with more force, or so that the military can come in. Let's talk about Antifa, because President Trump said that he's going to name Antifa a terrorist organization, that they are responsible for doing this. So here's the first one I've got. What is Antifa? And here's another. The president's critics who responded to it says it's not really an organization. It's more of a philosophical movement. Hey, Bo, glad you're here. Good to see you. Hope you're doing well. We do not have a domestic terrorism law, and of course, if we did, if there is such a thing as a left-wing group that's going out, trying to provoke violence and trying to provoke looting, then obviously they should be targeted. But the same thing should apply to right-wing movements. We talked yesterday about there's an indication that there are police departments that have been infiltrated by extreme right-wing groups that are white supremacists. And the FBI has even done a little bit of investigation on that. I think that came out in 2006, but I'm not sure. Well, anyway, so that's Antifa. Let's see what this says. And here's a story you can find on The Intercept about U.S. law enforcement has a history of infiltrating protests. I'm sure we've heard about things like when the Black Panthers were infiltrated or attempted to be infiltrated. I think even the Symbionese Liberation Army might have gotten infiltrated. You have to have grown up in the 70s to know what all that is. But from the same article, here's a notorious example where an informant working for both the Tuscaloosa police and the FBI burned down a building at the University of Alabama during protests over the recent Kent State University shootings. The police then declared that the demonstrators were engaging in unlawful assembly and then arrested them. So you use your infiltrators to break the law, which then justifies your going in and arresting everybody or doing whatever. And that appears to be what President Trump was trying to do. Did we already do this? Let's see what this is. Did we already do this? This is from a joke group that says Antifa, which again, remember, is a philosophy. It's not really a very organized group. It's kind of a philosophy, anti-fascist. They're seeking CIA funding. So now that they've been labeled a terrorist organization, they're seeking CIA funding. This is a joke from the text from that article. Hi, May. How are you? Glad you're here. So this is just kind of funny to me that it's a long-standing tradition that CIA funds terrorist groups. There's not enough space on the internet to provide a full list of terrorist organizations that have been CIA funded over the years, but it includes the Contras, the Cuban exiles, and so on and so on. Let's see what this is. Endless war comes home. This is a story. Notice the source here. We're starting to see that Republicans are having problems. I'm sure you saw that the Secretary of Defense has said he's not in favor of sending military troops on the ground to deal with any protesting that's going on. You probably have also noticed the protests are not nearly as violent. They're starting to settle down, but they're still, people are still out there. And I think this is going to continue for a little while. And there's also news that the George Floyd funeral is going to be attended by Vice President Joe Biden. Pretty sure President Trump hasn't been invited. That'll be next Tuesday. Very sad. Horrible. It's hard not to get emotional when you think about that. Anyway, notice this website, The American Conservative, and I don't care how liberal or progressive you are, this is a good website to check out every so often, because generally they don't use mindless arguments. They don't just repeat the same old line of crap. They actually dig into things, and you'll find yourself agreeing with them more often than not. And that gives hope for the nation. The idea that if I'm progressive, but I've got someone who's conservative willing to work with me, as long as we're going to be working on problems together, I don't care if we use conservative ideas here and there if they work. That's the job here is to fix the nation. The job here is to deal with the huge problems we have, and we know the list. Healthcare is just a mess. We have to deal with climate change. We have to make education affordable again. We've got to deal with an economy that is so unequal. We have social and economic inequality. All of these things need to be dealt with. And all of the answers, frankly, will not come from progressives. And they, as we have learned, all the answers cannot come from conservatives either. We're ultimately going to have to piece the nation back together again. But I believe that's going to require a pretty complete overturn of the folks who are in government now. We're going to need new people. So that's the Endless War headline. Let's see if there's a little bit of a text. These are some quotes. And I thought this was a great one. A senior retired military officer told me a lot of troops agree with Trump when he said he wanted to end dumb wars in the Middle East. Not sure they will agree with him when he tells them they need to fight wars in the Midwest. Now, I read comment sections all the time. So this is from the comments section from the American Conservative. And notice I've got it sorted by best, so this is the most popular answer. And this guy makes a little bit of a joke answer. According to the standards set by the Trump administration, when the Guaido coup first launched, the video footage of these protests is full justification for another foreign nation to directly intervene in the United States and remove President Trump from office by force right now. I think he's joking. I'm pretty sure he is. You may wonder who the Guaido coup is. Remember back in September, there was an attempt by some Americans along with some Venezuelans to get rid of Maduro, and they got caught. And they claimed to be working for President Trump, or that they owed their allegiance to President Trump. Now, in this article, if you read it, it's a wonderfully entertaining article. Somebody ought to make a movie about this because it's just a comedy of errors. And you'll be entertained if you read the story. But they make the point that there were better ways to invade this country. And President Trump even said, if I wanted to invade them, I'd just invade them. I wouldn't make a secret about it. I wouldn't send, 30 or 60 people or whatever they sent. They'd be pointless. And of course, the military in Venezuela mopped them up, and they've already executed a bunch of the people. I think they've got some American former SEALs under, they're under lockup. So that explains that. Anyway, I thought that would be good to end with something sort of entertaining. Thank you all for being here, and thank you all for sticking around. Let me know if you all would be interested in doing a Zoom chat once a week. Now, to do a Zoom chat, we would need to get email addresses from you. So if you would like to do that, you can see there's an email address on the crawler that is kind of continual, hank@hank4ky. Here it comes. And if any of you would be interested in doing a Zoom chat, we could do that once a week, possibly in addition to this. But I believe a lot of the campaign, for my campaign at least, is going to be online, most of it. And I appreciate you all. Mary, thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you all for being here. This ain't over yet. We got a long ways to go. And President Trump has been one of the luckiest people on earth. So even though he's down apparently by 12 points right now, November's a long way away, and we have a lot of work to do. And really what we need to do for the best of the country is convince people, just push the D, just vote Democrat, and let's just get this over with. The guy I'm running against is a guy named Brett Guthrie, and he's been very, very quiet about the murder of George Floyd. He tends to just spout. He was recently involved in the Congressional investigation of the whistleblower. Remember the whistleblower from the CDC, whose name escapes me right now. And if you want to see my opponent in action, that'll frustrate you, but that would be a good look. Anyway, thank you all for being here. If you haven't already ordered your Devo Shield, how to get it? They're $49. I haven't ordered mine yet, but boy, is there a more stylish way to protect yourself. Hi, Paulette. Thanks for being here. I will talk to you all tomorrow. I love you all. Take care of yourselves, and onward and upward. Thanks. Bye.